Doug, we want to give you a chance to respond. Is denialism the price of entry into the GOP?
Look, I mean, I think we can have a reasonable conversation about some candidates who, are saying they won't accept the election results, or, certainly things that Donald Trump have said that I would say have been destructive. But otherwise, everything I've heard is pretty well removed from where voters are. They do fear inflation. They do fear crime. And there are reasons for that. And what we've heard, not just from Republicans, but from an increasing number of Democrats in the last days, is sort of stating the obvious, that if you're not talking about those issues that voters are talking about, then you're missing the point. And that's not about preserving whiteness or anything remotely like that. It's about, what are people paying when they go to the gas station, when they go to the grocery store? Those are white families, black families, Hispanic families. So if you look at where the GOP is doing better than where they have over the past few cycles, they're doing better with Hispanics. They're doing better with African Americans. And we're seeing more African American, Hispanic, and Asian American candidates. So this is what voters are responding to, and what Republican candidates are talking about and should be focused on. Obviously, again, we can talk about election denialism and why it's terrible. And it's terrible when Donald Trump does it. It's terrible when Stacey Abrams does it, or pick your Secretary of State Republican candidate. But most Republican candidates are talking about the issues that voters are as well.
Stephen, you wanted to respond.
Yeah, I think the Democrats have wasted an opportunity here, because the Republicans, having given over the control of their party and the designation of their candidates to Donald Trump, are stuck with a Donald Trump who is focused on the past, who is obsessed with the results of the 2020 election. The Democrats could have said, we are the party that's worrying about inflation and that's worrying about the future. We're not looking backward the way the Republicans are. They didn't make that point. And I think that they lost a big opportunity in not doing so. Because remember, Bill Clinton used to say in that election, it's all about the economy and we have to look at tomorrow. That was his mantra. That's what the Democrats should have been doing here, and saying there's only one party that's looking at tomorrow. It's the Democrats. The Republicans are fixed on the past because they're in servitude, as it were, to somebody who's obsessed by his own results 2 years ago.
This is along the lines of what Senator Bernie Sanders has been saying for some time, that Democrats need to focus more on the sort of day-to-day issues that voters are feeling, rather than, democracy or abortion. Abortion, he says, is the chief issue, but it's not the only issue.
And in the end, there are a lot of things that matter to voters, but we don't know necessarily what is the principal factor that will motivate their vote. And I think what may be happening, depending on how the results come out tonight, is that we'll find out that though the majority of the nation is in favor of a right to abortion, that is not the bread and butter issue that's motivating their vote. That issue is what they pay at the pump and what they pay in the supermarket. And I think the Democrats lost an opportunity to take that on.
Yeah, I would just jump in and just point out here, I think that while it's true, sure, the Democrats are now perhaps regretting the fact they didn't have a harder focus, laser focus on inflation and the economy, and perhaps they put all their chips on abortion after the Roe versus Wade overturned decision by the Supreme Court. However, it's also to ignore the fact that the Democrats had quite a lot of capital on the economy. I think that they messaged wrong on a lot of achievements on the economy. I mean, this is a president who basically, hoisted millions of Americans up during the pandemic, passed the most consequential pandemic legislation in the history of the United States, $1.9 trillion, and basically giving, child benefits, tax credits to families, giving workers and businesses the ability actually to keep themselves afloat when they weren't getting paychecks anymore. I mean, these are all massive components of the Biden, you could call it, economic program that really wasn't messaged, as I see it, well enough. Sometimes almost not at all. It's almost impossible. It's almost easy to forget that Biden even passed any of these measures for the so-called economic well-being of America in some of the toughest periods that it's ever been through in its modern history.